just given the amount of discord and wars and violence and hatred and opposing opinions that's going around, talking about basic goodness might seem naive, even a bit silly. But I want to talk about it in a very specific way. The concept came to me through reading a book about Tibetan Buddhism, actually. And what struck me is just the sort of commonplace nature of such a statement, basic goodness in humans. And so what this is pointing to is something very specific, because it would be easy to dismiss as, if we look around, other people's actions, we'd have a hard time convincing anyone that all actions are good, for example. No, some of them are particularly dysfunctional to the individual themselves and to society at large, the good of the species, etc. So we can't, we're not talking about goodness on that level. We're also not talking about it in terms of thoughts, right? It would be equally hard to argue that all thoughts are beneficent to the individual, to others around them, to the world. It would be impossible to argue that. So we're not talking about that either. And we're also not talking about, trying to improve the world, trying to improve the world. There's probably been as much heartache, as much suffering, as many deaths caused by people trying to make the world a better place as maybe all other causes put together, pandemics included. We're also not talking about sort of trying really, really hard to love our neighbor, to be more compassionate, to just try to be a better person. So we're talking about something much more fundamental than all of these very human efforts to, have the right opinion, do the right thing. On that level, we can see that the net result of it as a nation, as a life form on this planet, it is, well, to be kind, it has a mixed bag of results. Let's say that. So what are we talking about? So this sense of basic goodness is something much more fundamental, and I suggest that it applies to all of us, all humans, probably even all sentient beings. And that's just the sense of wishing ourselves well, right? A desire to be okay, a desire to be happy, to feel safe. I'm guessing that, the deer and the rabbits and trees and bacteria, if they could reduce their sense of aliveness to a verbal statement, they would wish themselves well, to feel okay, to be fed and protected and feel at ease, feel okay about oneself. Just very, very basic sense of comfort in one's own skin, comfort in being alive in this world, wishing ourselves well, just that most fundamental sense. I suggest that we all share that in common. What gets us in trouble, however, is how we go about trying to achieve that. Those strategies, all the ways that we think that we have to do something, fix something, change something in ourselves, in other people, in the world. get something, achieve something, prove something, justify something, defend something, all of that. In service to what? In service to feeling okay, right? Just to feeling reasonably okay about ourselves. So it's not in the underlying really deep desire for just this sense of wishing ourselves well, sense of basic goodness. That's not where the problem lies. The problem is how we go about trying to do that. I mean, that's the issue. So we can look around. So, for example, I'm not saying that people's actions are justifiable just because their deepest nature is from the source. For example, if you were on a jury and maybe there was a gang member that had committed a particular crime, and you might vote for jail time. Right? But that deepest movement may have come from a sense of wanting to be accepted by his peers, wanting to be respected, wanted to be feeling like they were part of something that gave them some sense of safety, of belonging. So the underlying, what I'm saying is that the underlying sense may not be wrong, may be have a certain validity. How we go about satisfying that sense can be deeply flawed. I mean, there are many, many examples of this. If a person felt, let's say, insecure about their worthiness, and growing up, they were made to feel that way. They adopted that persona, and one of the things that they may choose to do, often unconsciously, is try to justify their importance, right? And there are lots of ways of doing that. Success and power are common examples, so you can see examples of that in the world of corporations or politics or whatever, where that sense of insecurity gets played out on a grand scale of if enough power, prestige, wealth is accumulated, then the strategy is that hopefully that would offset this sense of insecurity. But deep down, there's still this sense of wanting to feel okay, wanting to feel just at ease. And to satisfy that need may look very dysfunctional, like requiring power over other people. Extreme wealth. I mean, we can see that played out, in the world. You can see if people feel like maybe some people just feel that sense of sort of inner void, inner spaciousness, and needing to have something, gain something to fill that somehow. Maybe if we invade another country, maybe just that sort of grand world scale conquest, demonstration of importance, maybe that will fulfill me. Maybe that will, gain the respect that I may not have enjoyed as a child. Who knows what the reasons are? But you know, even in such extreme cases, um, you know, it can be seen often that it is just from a sense of wanting safety, wanting to feel good about oneself. You know, or you might see it on a social level, you know, that somebody's shy and afraid of the world and, you know, tries to counter that by being an extrovert, extra, you know, socialized to the extreme, you know, participate heavily in social media, to gain lots of followers. That will be satisfying. Satisfying for what? Again, we go back to just this sense of fundamental okayness. So we're not talking about something esoteric here. We're not talking about, I'm not talking about, as I often might, I'm not talking about true nature. I'm not talking about awareness. I'm just talking about very human aspect. But it has value to really see that fundamental, basic goodness as something that we all share in common. So what we typically do is ignore what we share in common and focus on how we're different, right? Different opinions, different appearance, different beliefs, and forget about this one very common, really deep, fundamental aspect of ourselves that we're just seeking happiness, seeking okayness. So this has, really considering this has two benefits. One is to ourselves, and one is in relationship with other people. The one with ourselves is that if we understand that what this deep sense of ourselves is really asking for, we can see those times when we spend our effort and time chasing things that won't ultimately satisfy that need. You know, they may feel good, may be pleasurable. It won't have any sense of permanence though. So we can really see what actions we have, what beliefs that we have, that we carry around that really aren't in service to this most fundamental human need of just wishing ourselves well. What is really in service to that versus what is actually just trying to mask over any sense of lack. So it has value in terms of looking at ourselves. It also has value in terms of looking at other people, because if we're judging other people based on actions and speech, you know, on one level, yes, sure. But if we recognize that deep down, everyone has the same basic sense of desiring wellness on all levels. If we can see that that's where the movement comes from, then we can see that what may appear as dysfunctional behavior or offensive speech or you know, abhorrent opinions, we can see that that is at the level of strategies taken on by conditioning in this lifetime, not from fundamental beingness of that person. You know, we're just talking about very human level. You know, we're not even very esoteric here. But it does have value because it takes away that level of judgment about other people, because we can all see plenty of examples in the world today. Anytime we turn on the news, well, what about so-and-so? Yes, on the level of that person's strategy to achieve some sense of well-being for themselves, the execution might be deeply flawed, might be criminal, might hurt a lot of people. Yes, all that's true. And yet, to recognize that at its core, there is that same sense of wishing oneself well. It's a sense of feeling okay about oneself. We may go about it in terribly dysfunctional ways. That's true. But if we can see that at the core, it's not to whitewash behavior or speech or anything. We still might not want to hang out with this person. We may advocate that they, not be in political power, may be put in jail, whatever our opinions are at the level of form, and yet recognize that in a most fundamental sense, our deepest desires are not different. And that takes away the whole question about blame. Because there's how we are, there's how the other person is, there's how the world is, and then there's how I think the world should be, how I think the other person should be, and how I think I should be. And those combinations can get very confusing. But if we can remain clear about this fundamental sense of goodness, we're not talking about actions, we're not talking about speech, we're talking about just this fundamental basic desire to wish ourselves well, that I suggest we share with all sentient beings. That changes the flavor of it. And it actually becomes the source of compassion when we see the level of suffering that maybe we've endured ourselves or that someone else is experiencing or causing, and recognize that it's all a result of misperception of how to satisfy this sense of wishing ourselves well. So from this perspective, this so-called flaws of the world, the dysfunctionality of the world as it now appears, I'd suggest is a reflection of the current state of our understanding as a species. The animals and the trees, the microbes, they're not the ones causing the problems. These are human issues that are being perpetrated on the planet. So we get the chance of having our understanding as a species being reflected back to us. So in that sense, it's a perfect environment for our deeper understanding, perfect environment for our awakening, to see that level of dysfunction on the level of form, and to recognize that what we most deeply want is it's not that. And we can see that. We have the opportunity to see how we ourselves move away from that and be both compassionate and aware of how that works, and also apply that same compassion and understanding to other people as well.